Dev, I have lots of friends who are complaining about their bosses telling them to come back to the office. I'm like, why not? Because I love working at the office. But companies are actually saying, hey, come back.
Yeah, and like you alluded to this, just a few moments ago, some of us didn't have that huge break during those lockdowns, all right? And it works for some, it doesn't. So lockdown restrictions have loosened extensively, Shahan, since a year ago. And companies across the country are now becoming more insistent, as you say, to, the employers saying return to work. Some employees are willing, others are not having any of it. ToAdvaita Naidoo is the Africa MD at executive search firm Jackhammer Global. ToAdvaita, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. I mean, before we get into how people are feeling about returning to work, can we safely say that companies are indeed increasingly asking employees to be returning to the office? Can we?
Yes, certainly. I think there have been a few news reports where companies have given the conditions under which employees will return to the office. And certainly anecdotally in our office, we're receiving phone calls and inquiries from executives first asking what is the rest of the market doing? And, is their company being progressive or regressive in this instance? And some of them are asking what their alternative options are because they aren't happy with the return to work mandates.
Yeah, I mean, that point is really interesting, isn't it? Because I see, like you say, you're already fielding calls from highly sought-after professionals who are saying they're not prepared to go back to the office. What are they exactly saying, and how rife is this?
So I think in terms of what they're exactly saying, it's really not so much about actually returning to work. It speaks about company culture and the employee value proposition. I think in a lot of instances, businesses have not been consulting with their employees, asking them ideally what they would like. There are these ultimatums coming down, and it does seem to be an all or nothing kind of scenario. And certainly we are seeing with some of the bigger companies, there is an all or nothing scenario. I think some companies describe it as a 5- scenario where you assume that the office is the center of gravity and this is where the status quo will be maintained, and any deviation from that is an exception to the rule, versus in the past where it might have been something that we call the 3+. We choose to be at work for 3 days of the week and 2 days might be more flexible. So there's a wide range of what companies are expecting of their teams. But I think at the core of it, it's this lack of consultation and the top-down approach that companies are taking. And that's really the most problematic thing.
And just from the employee perspective, I mean, you can understand why. It's been 2 years of really tired behavior around COVID-19. Costs have increased. I mean, just the travel costs just to get to the office. So you can understand why there's this need to say, well, hang on, can I do this from home?
Absolutely. And I think, more than just the logistical challenges, people have altered their lives, and we were beginning to claim back some semblance of normalcy in our lives. In the past, it felt like talking about a work-life balance, it was very aspirational for a lot of people. And yet in the last 2 years, we've managed to make it work. Not everyone is geared to work a 9-to-5 kind of job. Some people are far more productive in the evening. And in fact, they made their hours work for themselves. They made it work for their colleagues, and they certainly made it work for their families. And then just on the logistics side, like you said, travel costs have increased. People may have changed their living situations. They may have moved to areas which are more conducive to raising a young family. They may have sold their car. I mean, there's a plethora of logistical reasons that need to be addressed. And again, the immediate call to return to work is not taking those sorts of things into account. It's sort of change management 101. There was no time to marinate over the idea. There was no time to set in place the new logistics that would make this convenient. And there's certainly no time to adapt to the idea.
I'm just wondering what you eventually see happening over the next few months in South Africa, given our unique corporate culture here and beyond that. Because we saw this phenomenon, especially in the UK and the US, where you had swathes of employees simply quitting their jobs instead of returning to the office. I mean, that's how extreme it got. I can't imagine that we have that luxury here in South Africa, do we?
No, definitely. I mean, there has been some research in South Africa to suggest that we may experience some part of the Great Resignation, and there will certainly be pockets where this is evident, for example, in digital work. Realistically, though, our socioeconomic conditions in South Africa, they're so much more fragile than in developed countries, that any attrition we see will be small by comparison. But I think it really will be imprudent for companies to think that lack of choice for employees gives them the advantage, because the reasons that people may have had for wanting to leave, they will remain. There will be disengagement on the part of the employees. They may grudgingly return to the office, but there'll be reduced productivity, and that's probably worse than if they had left the job to begin with.
Yep, no, fair enough, very interesting. Well, Advaita Naidoo, thanks very much indeed. She's the Managing Director of Africa at Jack Hammer Global. All right, as far as the markets are concerned, we closed more than 0.5% in the red. Mining stocks took a bit of a beating today. Let's take a look.